Welcome to Leadershipedelics. My name is Sebastian Fouillade. I'm a dad, husband, product leader, entrepreneur, and psychedelic advocate. Join me every week as we explore the influence psychedelics and other life-changing experiences I've had on leaders around the world, their lives, and the future they build. I'm here to inspire you and help others come out of the psychedelic closet, breaking the stigma around psychedelics and giving credit where credit is due. Hi everyone, this week we meet with Jason Crawford. Jason Crawford is a dad, husband, serial entrepreneur. He's the founder of Sovereignty, which is an awesome supplement company. In fact, I came in contact with Jason through their supplements, trying them out and being really impressed with not only their supplements, but the way they show up as a company. That made me think that probably psychedelics had a hand in it. And so I connected with Jason, and sure enough, when we started talking about psychedelics, I found out he's been working with psychedelics over the last 6 years. It's opened his heart. It's helped him with fatherhood. It's helped him as a husband. We also talked about how psychedelics can help couples and maybe save years in couple therapy as a result. This is an awesome show. It talks about leadership. It talks about couple therapy. It talks about growing up during the war on drugs. There's a lot you'll be able to relate to and enjoy. So let's dive right in. Welcome, Jason, to Leadershipedelics. I'm so happy to have you here. And yeah, thank you. And in preparation for the show, I juiced myself up with Purpose Plus.
Oh, right.
Through the day, I found the right dosage for me.
Yep.
So I'm really very in tune at this point in time for this episode with you.
Amazing. I prepped the exact same way about 30 minutes ago. I wanted to be bright and focused and on it. So I did the same thing.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could actually introduce yourself in your own words, kind of talk about your life and how you ended up here, which is kind of a funny story because there was a little bit of a package mix up in the mail. And it really talks to your customer support as well.
Oh, yeah. So Jason Crawford, serial entrepreneur, new dad. I've got a son about 16, 17 months old now.
Oh, congrats.
Wife, Amanda, but been in entrepreneurship for, ever since I graduated college. And then currently the company that I'm working on right now is a supplement company. We're an herbal-based supplement that focuses on common human problems. And there were two problems that the initial formulas that we launched were problems that I was trying to work on. And that was daytime energy and cognition and really feeling my best so I could operate at a real high level. And then I've always struggled with sleep. And so we came out of the box with both of those and have been working on that for the past little while. But interesting on kind of how we met. You had found us and we messed up your order, which was a sad scenario, but
well, you to be clear, you didn't mess it up. It arrived with some
yeah, that's right, it was
tea tree, the package.
Yeah.
So when I got the package, it was this really nice box, and I had already ordered from you in the past, so this wasn't the first time, and I've been a fan for maybe 6 months when I listened to you on a podcast.
Yep.
And when I got the package, it had this smell. It was covered with tea tree oil or something that is like ant repellent or ant killer. It's one or the other.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, my first question was, are your packages waterproof? Because I still want some of them, but I don't know if I should go with it, or if I'll get in superpowers as a result, or die.
Sure. Yeah.
And you guys were fantastic. Like, you really made it up, and you sent me a new package, and I thought that was awesome. And I was like, hey, by the way, now that I have your attention, if your founders have done any work with psychedelics in the past, because you kind of get that vibe on how you approach your company that there's an influence there, and so I got put in touch with you, and this is how we're here.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because one of our give backs is MAPS, and we're big supporters, love everything that they're doing. But I had to make a hard choice a couple of years ago when we were starting the company, almost synonymous with starting. I had to figure out what am I going to get back to? What are we going to generate profits for, and ensure that we, push something forward that's near and dear to us. And MAPS and the Last Prisoner Project were the groups that we chose because of various things, just passions and ways that they fit in with the company and the products. But MAPS, there was a little bit of time I was worried of it being on there and us being broad appeal enough to people. And they're just at some point, and I guess probably also through a lot of my medicine work, it just became, I can't have this fear anymore. I need to have these conversations. I need to be proud about, funding, contributing to MAPS as a company, and then us personally, and participating in those things, because the gain is worth it. I mean, anything that we may lose from it, the positive side is humongous. But it's conversations we have to have with our hires too. When we're in the hiring process, we have to stop and say, hey, I just want to make sure you're very clear with what's important to us as a company, and that we give back to these organizations. Totally understand if it's not something you support. And you don't even have to support it. You have to support our values, but just understand that we're going to be pushing those organizations really strong through your, tenure with us. And everyone's been really receptive and excited about that. Some of them weren't as familiar with the organization, so we got to then even educate those people. And, but yeah, it's pretty ingrained in our company for sure. There's not only are we trying to support it, we live it. There's been significant amount of insights and intuitions that have come from the work that have impacted my company dynamics, my wife and how she was working for the company, not working for the company, and all these other things. So nice. Yeah, big part.
Nice. So let's go back in time. How was your life before your first journey with plant medicine or psychedelics?
I would say one of the bigger transitions was literally just opening up my heart. Yeah. And I say that because I had great parents, but my dad and his side of the family, they're pretty stoic. And there's a lot of good elements of stoicism, but the ones that aren't as good were the ones that I saw a lot of, and that I displayed in my behavior and personality in through my kind of almost early 30s. And some of that was closed off and, being closed off and not being very affectionate and touching with people and stuff like that. And as some friends came into my life, and then a lot of personal development work occurred, and then the intro of psychedelics, and I got to feel what it was like to have that open heart and how amazing it was. That's kind of some of the bigger contrasts, because I have a lot of work to do there on opening my heart and being empathetic and and have heart-based leadership. And I think that was a catalyst for that. So before, I didn't have that. I really just wasn't able to access it in the same way and let it guide me and lead me and make decisions, from a heart-based position. And so I was real grateful to get those experiences and then apply them in my life, because I realized once I touched it, I was like, this is amazing. And this is what I want. I know I can be the person that I want to be, and that I'm, capable of being, now that I saw that. And so I'm, it's crazy how that medicine just takes you to things that you need to see. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's been right there the whole time. It's literally right there. I just need to be it or do it or just have seen it. So
Can you take us back to that first experience you had? Like, how did you come across it? Like, did someone tell you about it, and were you interested? Like, I'm really interested on how that happened.
You want the Reader's Digest or the little bit more elaborate story?
We've got time. I mean, I think it's really interesting, because some people, like right now, they don't know. Like, they don't know about the plant medicine. They don't know about psychedelics. Yeah. And they don't know how it's going to show up in their journey. So it's really interesting to kind of hear about that, how that happened to you.
Yeah. Well, I probably should start as a child, because I was quite closed off on the thought of psychedelics. My mom was very heavily involved in the war on drugs. Yeah. We lived in the Dallas area, and she had, set up stuff for schools where kids had to go through drug education, and a lot of the stuff that, back in the day was super popular and kind of part of the narratives. And so, but that stuck with me. I mean, there was enough of it that, I just was like, oh, that stuff's, bad. It's going to send people, down the rabbit hole. I thought my life would be wrecked. And so when I met my wife, and she was a girlfriend at the time, she had kind of started to lay the groundwork and say, hey, I really am interested in trying LSD some point. You could relate. Here's what Steve Jobs said about LSD being one of the most impactful things he'd ever done in his life. And that got me thinking a little bit, but I was so programmed, like, no, if that's the path you want to go down, I don't know, maybe I told her even at that point, like, maybe we're not the best fit. I just think that's going to ruin our lives. And that was, my narrow mindedness. But I was in Japan. I'm part of a global entrepreneurship organization, and we had this event in Osaka. And at the very last day, I'm sitting down next to this guy, and he turned to me and said, hey, what did you do to change your life this past year? And it's a group that we're, really used to talking about top 5, bottom 5%. Yeah. So we're prepared for these types of questions. And man, I talked to him for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes on what I had done. And he sat back and he's like, whoa, like I was expecting, maybe one thing or something superficial. But that's pretty impressive. You're definitely trying to work on yourself, and like, congratulations. And I said, well, I'm sure you asked that for a reason. So what did you do to change your life? And he turned to me and said, I went to, I think, Peru and did ayahuasca, and it was just completely game changing. Boom. Yeah. Wild. And what was interesting, he was Saudi Arabian and lived in, I think, the UAE or Qatar at the time, but was working on getting into the, back to the United States, or to the United States. And I knew that culture probably had a pretty conservative viewpoint on this stuff. Didn't know that was a assumption, but in talking to him and seeing how much gain he got from it, like how influential it was in his life. I mean, he had did it several months before, but he was making enormous life changes after this event. Yeah. And I just saw his passion, and I saw him say he changed as a man and as a person. And I go, oh, if that's not a sign, then I don't know what is. So I must go down this path. Came back, did kind of the normal research with Michael Pollan's work, did the, a lot of the Joe Rogan podcast where he was talking about it. Yeah. And then I was telling my Rolfer about it. I was living in Austin at the time. I was telling him, saying, yeah, I'm really interested. This guy got this great experience in ayahuasca. And I had no idea that he had connections in that space. And so he actually introduced me to some facilitators, and that's how I got there, and was absolutely scared out of my mind going the very first time.
So was it was local?
It was in Texas.
It was in Texas. Okay. And that was about 6 years ago, right? Is that
roughly?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, my first time with ayahuasca was about 6 years ago as well.
Oh, really? So, okay. Amazing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, it'll be fun to talk about how we both trended differently since that moment. Oh, yeah. But I had never done anything significantly psychedelic. The only mind altering substances I had is caffeine, alcohol, and THC on occasion, that we were making some transition into the cannabis space, but nothing at that level. So I was absolutely terrified. I literally thought I may die. Luckily, our facilitators were amazing, enormous background in this. They have medical background as well. And they've been doing holotropic breath work and stuff for 15, 20 years in Europe. And so I just felt really comfortable in the environment. And when I got into it, there was one moment, I can't remember which night it was, because I remember several moments from that. It was certainly probably one of the bigger journeys that I've had, even though they're all important. But there was one part where everything just went dark. I mean, it just went completely dark. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't, hear anything. It was dark. And the first thing that happened in my mind was the internal dialogue, like, oh shit, I died. I knew this was going to happen. My mom was right. Now I'm dead. This is the problem. And it just took like a second longer, realizing, oh no, I am actually still here. And then there was that feeling of part of, that there was nothingness, but that was everything as well. And this just wave of euphoria came over me. And, you know, that was also kind of one of those moments of kind of splitting my consciousness up with my ego. And so that was one of the real spectacular moments. But that particular weekend, I had three death experiences of just, you know, pure ego dissolution and dissolving into nothing, or, you know, pure white light or pure dark light. And yeah, it was absolutely incredible. So very, very life-changing. One thing that I have to say, because I'm so intrigued about the potential of this medicine, and it's what's kept me in the work real closely. Going into that weekend, I have glaucoma runs in my family. And a few weeks earlier, I was talking to this chiropractor, because I always try to get an opinion. Is there anything holistic I can do to change the outcome of you know, where I'm going? Because I've had high eye pressures since I was 25. And the chiropractor looked at me, and out of all things, he said, "Well, you're not looking at something." And I was like, "Oh yeah. No, I'm looking at a lot of stuff in my life right now. I promise that's not one thing I'm neglecting." He's like, "Yeah, but you're not looking at something." He goes, "When you start looking at something, you're going to have a change in that." And I kind of blew him off, but I remembered that comment. Well, in those journeys, that journey weekend, it was a 2-night deal. On the second night, I had been, you know, looking at all kinds of things, of course. And at one point, I felt this pop in my eye and this really cool ooze kind of fluid flow out of it. And I just thought of it. I was like, wow, you know, this is just psychedelics. This is just what happens when you're tripping, and, you know, just didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
I went to the eye doctor 3 days later, and to kind of wrap this story up and make it short, my glaucoma went away.
Wow.
My high eye pressures went away. And I had asked this exact doctor about 2 years earlier, same thing. What can I holistically do to change this? You know, I'm committed to that. I'll make those changes, supplements, lifestyle. If I need to, you know, not drink beer anymore, so whatever that is, I'm down for that. He's like, "There's nothing you can do. This is your path." And it was hilarious because, you know, they'd done the readings, but the assistants do the readings. When he came in with the chart, he like looked at it, and he was so puzzled and perplexed. And he closed it thinking he grabbed the wrong one. And the nurse goes, no, that's his chart. And I am not so sure what's going on either. And he comes in and does my eye pressures multiple times. And he was a pretty old school Western doctor, nothing against that. But I didn't want to go into the conversation with him. It could have been nothing else. So for whatever that's worth, you know, I've oftentimes done a lot of body scans when I've been, you know, in that space, and I've seen some really cool results from that. I've released tension, I've released stress that's taken me to things that I realized were causing me stress and tension, but were, you know, occurred, you know, years ago when I was a kid. But that eye thing, it blew my mind, and it got me to a point where I was doing it on a quarterly basis. Because if it impacted my body to that level, I felt there was so much good that would come from it. And at the end of the day, you know, really learning what I was able to do with my mind and consciousness was one of the bigger benefits. So just bizarre. No one's been able to explain that one. I've run it by a lot of medical people, and they're just perplexed. And my pressures have crept up a little bit, but I got literally 3 to 5 extra years that I wouldn't have had that, you know, they would have been normal medical intervention on that. So crazy things happen.
That's fantastic. I've never heard that. And it's funny, I went through the same pattern from a frequency perspective as I started 6 years ago. And then at one point I was doing it every quarters, doing ceremonies like 3 nights in a row, for example, because I got so much information from it and benefits. I mean, I was journaling, like I've got journals full of downloads, and it's amazing what you get from that. How did you, so in that first ceremony, were you by yourself or did
no, it was a group. There was probably 8 of us. They were all of my friends. I put the group together.
Oh, that's nice.
And I did it with my wife too. And that was, both comforting. But also, as we've, you know, talked about it in, you know, regular social situations when the time's appropriate, people have asked about it. And one of the questions always comes back is, oh, would you do that with your partner? And it's the quickest, easiest answer. I'm like, you don't understand how much more powerful it becomes when you do it with a partner. I mean, it's so exponentially stronger. And her and I use these ceremonies as well as cleanup for our relationship, clearing out the cobwebs, having difficult conversations after we've taken things into the journey and had a lot of insights. So it's been wildly helpful on our relationship. And, I knew that, the podcast was kind of around leadership, but a good leader, I think, is someone who has a fulfilled and balanced life. And psychedelics for us has been the opportunity to have that. We've got so many cool experiences. At some point I'll tell about the one recently, but they've just been major shifts in our lives.
Yes, no, it's beautiful. I can relate to that. I have similar experience, and I'm often saying that it's like couple therapy, but in one night. Like you get 3 years of couple therapy in one night.
Absolutely.
And it's challenging too, because I've met a lot of couples where the ceremony exposes all the problems right away. And, in a way, it's like a dance. You have to respect each other, respect each other's space, and know when to come together in the
Very
ceremony.
Much so.
But also, not always be worried about the other person and let them struggle when they need to struggle. And that's not talked about enough. And that's so powerful. I'm so glad to hear you talk about that, because that's not often approached. I mean, I'd love to, it's funny because you mentioned leadership, and I'd like to bring it back to that, but I use leadership in the broadest sense possible. It's, how you lead your life, how you lead as a parent, how you lead within the community. It's not just the title. I think a lot of people, when they hear the title of the podcast, they're like, oh my God, I'm not a big time CEO, or I'm not this, I'm not that. Why do you want me as a guest? I'm like, I want you as a guest because you're trying to manifest a beautiful vision of the future.
Yes.
And I'd like to know why and how. And so, I mean, I'd love to hear about that recent experience you had with your wife.
Yeah, it was pretty big. She reminded me as I was walking down here to join on how much how leadership played into these decisions, and how the intuition was invoked by the weekend that we were in. But it was the second night. I was on a heart-based journey. She was on a mushroom journey. And kind of like you were saying, the ground rules for the group that we work with is 3 to 4 hours on your own mat, really go deep and introspective and do your own work. And then after that, you can join up with your partner. And so we joined up. She'd been working with me in sovereignty for a year and a half, really focused and dedicated. And prior to that, some part-time, she was doing some work in California and flying back and forth, but she was, still helping us as an entrepreneur. She's in it whether she wants to be in it or not, but she was in it full time. And we had our baby, and it was we've decided just to have one child. He's absolutely amazing. But she realized in her work the night before that there was some grief around that, but she resolved that grief and saw, this, beautiful opportunity for us as a family, and what that meant to her. But the second night, she just realized in her journey that, hey, I want to focus on my child. I want to have more time with my child. I want to be more of a stay-at-home mom and focus on that and pull back from the company some. I hadn't chatted about this in forever. I'm on my heart-based journey. And all of a sudden this intuition comes up and says, you just got to let Amanda go and do that. Yes, we're a small team right now, and that impacts things, but we will find our way. We always do. You need to, let her do that. That would be super meaningful for her and for my son and for myself as well. So when she came on the mat, she was, just stroking me kind of nicely, just to, kind of get that connection built up. But I looked at her and said, hey, the first thing I said, I accept your 2 weeks resignation as of today. And she probably cried for 10 minutes. And when she was able to compose herself, said, so incredible, because in my journey, it was, how do I have this discussion with you? How important it is to me,
Oh,
and that she knew that was what she needed to do in her life right now.
that's
And
beautiful.
we've had a couple of those scenarios where, when we hopped on the mat, finally, a conversation came up that what we had both been working on or thinking about in that moment, and not, wasn't even specifically occupying our mind going into the weekend at a high level, but it came up and realized, wow, that's pretty important, we should probably bring that up. One of them was the decision to have a child. I was getting older and was trying to figure out if I wanted to do that or not, and had a journey weekend, and I got to try on being a dad. I mean,
Oh,
literally, that's the cool thing about psychedelics for me. In so many instances, when I've brought questions in or experiences in, the medicine has allowed me to be in that moment and to feel what that feels like. And I had these visions of me holding up my son and how amazing that was, and it felt so good and so happy. And I'm like, you know what? I think this is the right thing for me, and there's alignment. And so that was a different time where I jumped on the mat and said, hey, I think I'm ready to have a child, and I'm really excited. And she started crying for about
I
10
was going to
minutes,
say, and she cried for 10
10
minutes.
minutes at least. And then it turned to me, she was like,
Beautiful.
oh my God, I've been wanting to have this conversation with you. It came up to me too, a little bit earlier. And
Oh,
I knew, where how I felt about it and that I wanted it. And so we've had several of those moments. Those were the two biggest ones ever. And they both, revolved around my son. But yeah, that's wild. The
wow.
intuition that comes as a result of this medicine has been the most interesting thing to me.
I mean, it's so beautiful. To me, this is what it's like being human. It helps you really just transcend all that and figure it out and work on it as a couple and make those decisions. And I get excited, when I hear the stories, because I have similar personal stories where,
What's some of your good ones?
well, the good one was my first ceremony. I've talked about it before, and the first ceremony, my wife was in the Amazon jungle, and I couldn't. We were dating at the time, and I couldn't go there with her. So I went and did ceremonies with the Native Americans who were allowed to do peyote and ayahuasca ceremonies,
Oh, wonderful.
and we were doing ceremonies at the same time. And so, having an engineering background, my first thought, and we connected in the ether. So I met her and I was like, oh, hi, honey. And like my first ceremony was beautiful. It was full of love and everything. And I was like, hi, honey, in the ether. I'm going to give you a number. And when we meet again in a few weeks, you'll give me the number back, because I wanted to validate that it was working. We'd connected in the ether. And so I give her a number, and then she was in the jungle, so she had no connection and everything. She was at a place called the Temple of the Way of Light.
Mm.
And we met 2 weeks later at the airport. I was like, so what's the number? She's like, what number? And I was like, oh man, that didn't work. And it took me actually a year to figure out the meaning of that experience. I was browsing through an old photo album, and I grew up in France,
Okay.
and so we write the dates differently.
Mhm.
It's the day and the month rather than the month and the day. And in the margin in the photo album, I saw 6/3, anniversaire de maman, and I was like, oh my God, I give her my mom's birthday. That every year I forget which day it is. So the first lesson that I got from grandmother ayahuasca was, don't forget your mother's birthday.
It's a good one. That's a nice
And
lesson.
yeah, it's super powerful, because a lot of time you get insights about your parents and everything,
Sure.
and how much they love you, and you can feel that love. And that was the first one. The second ceremony, I saw the birth of our daughter, who
Oh,
was
wow.
born 2 years later. I mean, it was outside. There was a big bonfire, and we were all around it, and I could see that soul being birthed. And it was so clear to me that it was our daughter, and she was ready, and we were gonna have her. Uh, and it's so powerful. And I've got many more like that. I mean, it's incredible. Like, you try to tell the stories to other people and they're like, oh wow, like, I mean, another one that's really powerful is feeling your connection to nature. And I think that's a big part that I notice in your company as well, and how you approach things, how you pick your ingredients. For me, I saw my body die and being reclaimed in the earth and reintegrated into that cycle that we're all part of, and the closeness we have to nature. I felt that symbiotic relationship between the air we breathe, which in my mind is the unconditional love from Mother's Nature, that every breath is a gift. And it's a gift. We've developed that relationship over the years. And like, some of those things, you can feel them. And it's different from knowing them. Like, we get taught a lot of things at school, at work, but when you feel it in your soul, it really changes how you approach life, and it changes your path. I mean, it's changed my path. That's why I'm here now talking to you, because I think it's important to tell the stories, and go from there.
And you had mentioned kind of before we hopped on that there was some big path changes for you. And
oh, sure.
I presume some of it was from this work, and if so, what's like one or two big ones that you would have interest of chatting about? I'd love to know.
Yeah, well, the first one is, I published a book that talks. It's called Stairway to Healing: The Crooked Path We Travel.
Cool.
And like it basically, what happened is I went through an emotional breakdown, and I went down to Peru. That was afterward. I was already working with plant medicine to find some healing. And in one of those ceremonies, I got a very strong calling, and I would never use the wrong calling any other way. And I could never understand what a calling was before that, but I got a very strong calling that I needed to follow the path of the medicine and help others, help people. And I was like, man, that's a lot of work. I don't want to go all hippie and like, I have 3 kids, and I don't want to just have responsibilities. I can't do that. So I went back to work, and I was working at Microsoft at the time, and I went back there, and I went in the rat wheel. And sure enough, what happened is, like, my subconscious started acting up, and it put me in a very big depression. And it was like, dude, like, what the heck are you doing? Like, why do you keep doing this? Like, you have a very strong calling, you received it. It's very clear. And like, I didn't even know what the depression was then. Like, I thought I was sick. I had brain fog, I couldn't focus. I went to my doctor. The doctor was like, oh, well, where are you working? I'm like, Microsoft. Okay. I've seen many cases like yours. I can give you some anti-anxiety medicine, or you can talk to my wife, who's a therapist. I tried the therapist, didn't work great for me. I didn't want to do the anti-depression medicine. So went back to work, and then one day I realized I got to change that. Like, I can't just keep going like this. And so, over the last year, I've been kind of reconfiguring everything. And, by the time this podcast is out, I'll be out of Microsoft. I'm working on 3 different psychedelic companies right now, helping them in different ways. And then I've got this podcast. And so, the psychedelic companies, one is a crowdfunding platform for psychedelic companies. Another one is actually trying to help therapists get certified to help with preparation and integration of retreats, because we put a lot of value in retreats that leverage that ancestral knowledge. And so we think therapists can prepare people and help them integrate, but it's really good if they can send them to retreat centers that they trust. So I'll be helping develop that network of retreat centers.
Oh, wow.
And then another one is an edutainment platform to help people who maybe have been brainwashed with the war on drugs,
Yep.
Like, yeah, I was too. Like, I've seen the poster of the, this is your brain on drugs. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna mess up my life. But like, people are changing. They're curious. So we want to build an experience that helps those people that are curious. They're not really ready to dive in yet, but they want to know, like how to prepare for that. Like the other thing I don't touch on is my my journey didn't start with psychedelics. It started with breath work, and I had an out of body experience with breath work. I was teaching yoga, doing meditation, so like all that actually helped me later. And one of the things I'd like to do is help people prepare for ceremonies,
Yeah.
because it's not, like Mike Tyson is like, hey, I've done Toad 60 times. And then everybody is like, I'm going to go Toad. I'm like, please don't. This is like, this is dangerous. You have to prepare. And there's so many other things you can do to help your life before you get there. So, yeah, that was a lot. To
No,
answer your question.
that's awesome. Well, that's so amazing, exciting on the things that you're participating in, and I can't stress enough to the people that I ever run across and talk to them about that work, about what you said. Preparation is crucial.
Oh, yeah.
Get your body in a good place, but get your mind and start getting navigation skills. Walk through those, just like anybody that's doing anything important in their life that it's got risk. You go through exercises and you prepare for them.
Yeah.
And it took, our group was good, and they worked with us some on the navigation skills, and then they've gotten even better at teaching them and training them. And then I've learned, them myself and do my own research. But I can't believe how those weekends have gone now that my navigation skills are built up
Yes.
at the level that they do. And it could have been a one-page paper and some explanations around that in advance. So yeah, I'm with you. Don't, I always tell people, don't run down to Peru and try to, just hop into this work. Do a lot of preparation. Local may even be a good option the very first time. But what I noticed in the earlier days, about 6 to 5 years ago, I was catching a lot of people that had done some work in South America. And the big thing that I noticed was the lack of integration that they, not that the retreat facility had, they probably did their best, but the people came back and thought, this is this monumental experience that's going to carry down. I've noticed that I carry a lot with me from the weekend. When I come out there, I'm insanely elevated. But that starts coming down, and I want to make sure that I carry those core components out. So one of my deals is when I leave, there's usually some things that I've thought about that I need to do or want to do, or that, were new to me. And I write those down. I go and do them. I put that into motion and get those new neural pathways firing. And I encourage people to do that, to take those real, big, amazing experiences, but really come back and do something with it. Because it can wane if we're not actively re-engaging with it.
Yeah. So what are some of those changes that you took from that experience that help you shape what you're doing now, like your company and how you run it? Like, I can see it in your narrative, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah. Let me try to think. When I started doing the medicine work, I was part of my other company that I had for 18 years, and I sold that last July. And where the medicine work was really informative to me was a few things. Number one, giving me the courage and then the vision to try new things and to try to elevate our employees. And we were in the insurance space, so it's not always the most exciting environment to work in. But I couldn't accept that, especially after the medicine work. I wanted to go back and be a heart-based leader and more empathetic and try to raise people up. There were people that had been working for us for a long time and really weren't doing a whole lot to change their lives. And I wanted to be an opportunity, or kind of a pathway if they decided that was something that they wanted to do. So being more engaged with people like that. And, one of my company mottos, prior company and the current company, is, as employees come across our path, and for sovereignty, the same thing with our customers, we want them to leave a better person than they came. Well, any way that we can possibly do that, whether it's sharing our knowledge, whether it's education, whether it's support and them pursuing their dreams. We've had people that, you know, came to us and said, you know, I'm really thinking about, you know, going and doing this job change, you know, but I was nervous about telling you. And we're like, high five. If you see where you need to go and where you want to be, then the only thing we're going to do is celebrate that and hope you get there quickly. Don't worry about us. You know, we'll be fine. And we're just glad that, you know, we're accomplishing that. So it's picking up things like that. Again, I was so left brain in my 20s and my early 30s and really, you know, just that hamster wheel in my head and that just made me very closed-minded and narrow-minded. And definitely by both the spiritual openness that I've been exposed to, and then literally the physical changes that occur each time you do this work, I operate at a different, you know, level. And it's one that fits real well with the current company. It's just, you know, we want to help people. We want to impact people's health. And that could just be through blog articles that we put up. That could be through, you know, getting out and talking or with the supplements that we have. But that was just crucial to us, is to help people get to where they want to go and kind of help them reach their maximum human potential. And that just kept coming up over and over. And it was hard because I kind of like you, I had this trough of a time. And that's probably the other reminder that, you know, through this work, like my first one was magical. I'm like, oh, I'm going to come back. I want to do that walk with the pharaohs again. And I want to, you know, be in the Mayan pyramids. I want to, you know, be, all that part of the universe that I was. And I've yet to replicate my first time. And my facilitators were always like, yeah, don't compare and contrast, because they all have these nuggets in them and they're just going to be different for all kinds of reasons. But that being said, had some challenging things going on in my life. And the work was dark. I mean, it was really, really dark. The common thread or common theme that came up in almost any medicine that I did was tunnels. I was in black or dark tunnels all the time. And it was just my subconscious telling me that, number one, this was a phase, but it was acknowledging that I'm there, probably because I'm, you know, putting myself there every day through the mental patterns that I was displaying. And I wasn't trying to manifest, you know, the more positive outcome, but it kept going through the tunnel, and there was lights at the end on these various scenarios. And that kind of gave me that hope, that realization that this is just a short, you know, blip in my life. Yeah. And but there was a period of time the medicine work was it's hard often, but it was really hard and had that dark overtone to it. And man, a couple of years ago I broke through, and it's just been absolutely amazing. So
and that's important. I mean, you called it work and you call it hard. A lot of times when you tell people, it's like, oh, I'm going to go down to Peru, or this weekend I'm going to work with plant medicine and it's a psychedelic. People are like, oh, go have fun. And yeah, some people think you're just going to go there and get high and you know, sing Kumbaya or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, no. It's hard work. I mean, yes, there's a silver lining. I think, you know, a lot of times some ceremonies can be hard at the beginning, and then you get to kind of enjoy the fruits toward the end. But it's hard work. It's purposeful work. And also you can get better at it over time, which you touched on as well, is you can kind of improve your skills working with the medicine and get more out of it. And that's the part that I think is talked even less right now. It's really about understanding that it is a relationship that takes time to develop that relationship, on how you work within the subtleties. That's not even talked about in the trials right now, with the hyper focus on the substance and the dosage. I'm like, no, it's not. You're peeling an onion. It can take time.
Yep. Well, and but on that onion though, I have always been amazed by people that are, you know, approaching psychedelics in different ways, and whether that's bigger doses or more often. And I ask them, like, you know, where are you going with this? Or are you constantly seeking and you just have a need to seek, or what? And their just response is like, no, every time I go and do this differently, another layer comes off, and you keep discovering more things about yourself, about the universe, about all that. So it's amazing. I don't think it for me it will ever end. And I've met a lot of people that have kind of felt that same way, that it just constantly can give back. But yeah, those navigation skills are crucial. And it's weird because being an entrepreneur, I don't like to follow a whole lot of rules. And we went into these environments, and the safety I totally got, but I wanted to. So the way that I embrace the way everyone practices, and I encourage everyone to practice differently, to find what works for them, or to maybe even just to get the different experiences. But our folks have us lay on a mat, completely blindfolded, listen to music, and you are not to move unless you have to go to the restroom, and you're on that mat with the blindfold. And I didn't overly like that at first, because again, I hadn't done psychedelics. So when I took the mask off, I'm seeing, this world come alive, and thinking that's pretty amazing as well. But I didn't realize that I was using up a lot of energy that could have been focused on my internal work and my internal journey. And I was using that stimuli. So I embrace and love, when I take mushrooms and go walk through a forest, and when other people do. But for people that haven't done it that way, that real introspective approach, they don't know the other powers that the medicine has. And so I've been grateful to be able to work that way. But the skill set is, I'm sure it's just a lifelong journey, but I'm glad I have a lot of the tools that I have now. I've needed them at times.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, did you take any of those lessons, and when you were coming up with the idea for your supplements, and how connected you want them to nature? And the other thing I like is you're challenging a little bit the Western medicine approach. And I'm curious if that came from that, or some other sources there.
Yeah, definitely. And we just had a storm blow through, which is hilarious because I'm in Boise right now, and we do not get a whole lot of storms here, nor thunderstorms. So in advance, I'm sorry for any of the background noise. I think definitely through the plant medicine work, there was a much stronger connection to nature and the power of nature. And the ability for us to heal ourselves, the ability for plants and a lot of natural products that are out there, and the stuff that comes from the earth, how powerful that can be. So the plant medicine work made those connections, and then we got pretty involved in the cannabis industry as well, as it was starting to flourish, and we were going to a lot of events and part of investor networks. And my wife worked for a company in Southern California at one point. And I just started noticing how people were getting these really amazing results from plants. I mean, they were healing, they were, going through something that it made that a lot easier, all of that benefit. And then, when you start looking at traditional Chinese medicine and the Ayurvedic medicine, on how powerful that is. And to me, I just shunned it. I mean, it was an exact same walk that psychedelics were. I was brought up in a very Western medicine. If you've got a symptom, take a pill to fix it, and let's not get to the root cause. And so I don't think my health was at the the best level that it was because of that approach. And when I started discovering that and realizing that I can utilize plants and a lot of these more holistic kind of holistic approaches in order to live my life. That's when I just became super fascinated and infatuated with the fact that, again, these medicines have been used for thousands of years. Some of the ingredients that we use, for instance, in any of the TCM or Ayurvedic, and there's just a massive amount of potential there. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I've been super impressed. I had doubts originally when I heard you talk about this. I was like, wow, is that for real? It's like, is this just stuff like loaded with caffeine or melatonin? And I try melatonin regularly, and I've got, I've tried other produce that have slow release caffeine. But what's interesting is with the experience I've had with Dream Plus, for example, has
Yeah.
been unlike anything else. And I've been monitoring it with my Oura Ring,
Awesome.
and I can see, I was like, wow, my deep sleep has doubled every time I use Dream Plus. And there's other really interesting things that happen if you just take pure melatonin. For me, is I'm a little bit more negative the next day.
Mm, mm.
And there's things that I think that working with plant medicine has attuned me to myself more, because
Yep.
it does. But with Dream Plus, I don't have that negativity the next day. And so I was super impressed with that. And then the Purpose Plus, I was also super impressed with that as well, because I can't normally take coffee. Like if I take coffee, I don't sleep. I've got stomach issues and all
Mm.
that. And
Yeah.
so my first reaction was like, oh, this is not going to work for me. And I've been trying it, and here we are at, like, it's 3 p.m. for me. I would usually be exhausted at this time, and no, I feel great. I'm really enjoying our conversation, and I think I'm lucid. Uh,
Very.
so it's been fantastic. So I really, appreciate like what you've done there. And no, I think you've answered my question. And it's not just marketing. And this is something I really appreciate there.
Yeah, I think there's a tie-in again to the plant medicine work, because I got so much more connected to humanity. I got so much more connected to my own personal heart and my journey, that when we were developing the supplement, come to find out, I went about it completely the wrong way, and completely opposite of what virtually any other supplement company does. And we were so methodical. We were so mindful about how we were putting stuff together. We only wanted the best ingredients. I hardly sacrificed anything to get what we ended up getting. And I've, now realized it's just not the typical journey of a supplement company. They often try to use the least amount of ingredients to sell at the highest price. And then if they want to do more for somebody, they sell you another product. So you're having to buy all these products to get this suite of experiences. And I was like, well, first off, I don't have a whole lot of time for that, even though I take a lot of supplements. And I know a lot of other people that are busy in their day, and if they just had some help that was, all put together in one and did a lot of things for the body, then I think we would have some really good outcomes from that. And that's what we did. But I mean, man, we were testing energetics. I have an Eastern practitioner friend who was part of the original formulation, and every ingredient that came through, we were doing muscle testing and energetic testing to use as a input, whether that should go to the next phase. And then we obviously did all of our research and development on ourselves, and we were guinea pigs forever. But yeah, we were insanely thoughtful, even on purpose, as an example, because you mentioned caffeine. Caffeine is a great nootropic in smaller doses, but as at least in American society, we usually do a lot more than where it becomes useful. And then we have the adrenal impact and all these other negative impacts. And every time I have a doctor touch our formula that's involved with our company, I have them go over it again. I said, I do not want to have negative impacts with our formula. That has to be positive. We have to offset caffeine, for instance. And we kept caffeine. Yeah, we kept caffeine in because we are a caffeinated society.
Yeah.
And again, small doses, great. Big doses, no. And over and over and over, people have been very complimentary of the antioxidants that we chose, the adaptogens that we chose to make sure that we are supporting the body to give the people the energy that they want and need, but to do it in a very healthy way. So I hope we stay true to our core. It feels like we have. And the only thing that I guess we're lacking on right now, again, we're still a small team. I was not in the supplement business before this, so I had to do a lot of learning. And we originally started off as more of a hemp-based product. And so to get educated in hemp was very challenging. There's less information out there. You got to go to expensive conferences. You got to build a lot of connections. Then you have the regulatory component. When we got out of the test kitchen, we ended up creating a robust supplement that was, and we've got a hemp version, a non-hemp version that worked. The hemp helped and synergistically complemented, but it wasn't a hemp formula. So I had a little identity shift last August, realizing, hey, we're in the dietary supplement space. We've created these really super supplements that should be good for a lot of people because of the mindfulness, but we're not. It's not a hemp product anymore. But yeah, I think all that mindfulness in creating it, and me not minding that, yeah, this is taking time. This is costing money to do all this R&D. Was some of the skills that I learned in medicine work that, yeah, this is hard, but patience pays off. And the others, the silver linings that come from some of the hardship it can be immense. So
Yeah.
I definitely, I've learned life skills, like how to approach challenges and other things differently based on my medicine work. And a lot of times when I'm stuck, I go back to either I anchor some of the great feelings that I had there, or I'm like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. What's going on? Oh yeah, medicine work just reminded me. Hey, just step into this. Don't run from the monster. Go to it. Ask, what are you there to teach me? And when I've been just sitting here sober as can be, and I have these problems, and I start doing that same thing, sure enough, my subconscious, comes alive, and I get a lot of times some good answers, or at least some progress. So
that's beautiful. It looks like also balance is a big part of how you approach things, and like at least balance came really strongly in multiple ceremonies I've had, and I'm just curious, like, what does balance mean to you, and where do you find that balance or apply that balance in your life?
Yeah, I was very driven, and still am driven, but driven toward different causes, and trying to manifest different things now. But in my 20s and early 30s, it was, success related, and the harder and more that I worked, the more successful I was going to be, and often, and money back then was certainly a focal point. And as I have transitioned out of that in my 30s through both just awesome people that have impacted my life, through medicine work showing me there's much more to this time in this meat suit and on this planet than money. It's opened me up to have more balance, to have the realization sitting there with my son as the most important thing I could do in that given moment. Than anything else, than a phone call that I might miss, an email, a dollar to be made, an errand to run. That's the most important thing. And I can't tell you that I was that way, 8 years ago. I just was like, nope, got to get done. I work. I see you maybe have some emotional needs or needs. I'll tend to those later. And now I stop and let that in and be part of that love for myself, and love for other people. And it's definitely been a nut that got cracked open that wasn't there.
Yeah, this is so powerful because many of us men have been brought up to be, that strong person that doesn't necessarily show emotion. At least that's one of the things you touched on that earlier.
That's what I was modeled.
That's how I was modeling, and that's how I was brought up. And the medicine cracks you up open and says, nope, there's a little bit more to life than that. So listening to you talk about your experience with your son, that just takes me to, like my experiences with my kids and my daughter. Just the other night, I was playing harmonica to her before she was going to bed, because I never played music instruments until I started working with medicine, and then I started playing flute, harmonica, drums, mouth harp, like all kinds of things. And now I'll play with her right before bed, and when I did that, it was like dim in the room. I was rubbing her back, playing harmonica. She's 4, wearing her pink pajamas, and I was like, do you like it? Do you want me to do that every night? And she was completely melting and smiling. And I'm like, wow, like this is it. Like I'm also giving her a gift, like a memory she could go back to when she's older and find warmth in her heart. And some of those things, if I hadn't done all my work with ayahuasca or magic mushrooms and other things like the toad, like that I wouldn't have seen that.
Me
I would
too.
have just walked the earth, pretending I'm strong,
Yep.
and running the rat race. And so,
Say
like,
100%. I would have been in these exact same shoes. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I'm a pretty energetic go person, but the medicine work has definitely allowed me to slow down, because I have to do it when I'm there. Because one time I rushed into a ceremony, I had to pick up my wife from the airport, and we zoomed out to where we were doing
yeah,
the work, and had no time to decompress. It's a lot of times before I'll do heart math and get into a real coherent space, and that puts your body in a good physiological place. And I didn't get a chance to do any of that. I'm just like, I'm like walking in and they're giving me my cup of ayahuasca. Not recommended at all.
oh yes. I was gonna say,
the,
yeah,
this is spiritual and very powerful, but there is your nervous system that is still at play. There is true physics, and the nervous system does not like to be amped up and to try to get into that space. So I had a really tough time that day, but yeah, and so, again, remembering to slow down, remembering, breath work in advance of that, remembering when I'm in that journey, that it's sometimes when I want out, how staying in some of the tough parts again has these really incredible outcomes. That's been again applied to that balance in my life, that slowing down some, and witnessing the beauty and the joy that I have in front of me. It taught me that. No one
yeah,
else has sat there and taught me that. People have tried and
yeah,
they've told me, but it's kind of,
yeah,
you said it, you alluded to it earlier. People can tell you things, or you can read and learn, but I have to feel some of these things
yeah.
that I really didn't feel for a good portion of my life. And now that I felt that, I'm like, now I see that is totally amazing, and that's a worthy pursuit for me to go down.
I mean, that's so important because you're building that better world as a result. You're
Yeah,
building a better world for your son, through your company. Uh, and I think that's why it's so important to come out and talk about how you got there, because people are benefiting from that better world. Your son is, but everybody who's using your supplement, like it's like they might not even realize it. People who use Apple products might not realize that Steve Jobs did quite a bit of psychedelics
yep,
and gained insight from that. People who were a believer of the war on drugs, they benefit from all that. So I think it's really important to realize that even the world we live in has been shaped already by the benefit of psychedelics, but because there was a stigma, a lot of leaders stayed in the closet,
yep.
and that's changing. So it's fantastic. Well, we're almost at time. I have one more question,
Okay.
and I asked you that before the podcast, in the form I get you to fill out, but it's if you could find a totem or an animal to capture the essence of leadership. I love your answer on that. So I wonder if you to talk about that and build on that. If you remember your answer.
Yeah, hopefully I think I do, because there's a spirit animal that I identify with that has come up. It first came up in visualization and breath work,
Yeah.
but it kept coming up. It stayed with me in all my medicine work. And that's a buffalo. Is that what I put on there?
You put llama and buffalo.
Yeah,
So
llama, buffalo.
I
The
was
llama
trying.
came. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I was actually I was talking about it with my wife, and I was like, "Is it llama fellow, a buffalo?" And no, I'll let you
Well,
go.
it's interesting because they both, when you stop and look at them at what they represent, that there's some similarities. But the buffalo came up, and it's come up so many journeys. And what I think that the buffalo was trying to instill in me again was that slow down. These are strong, sturdy animals, but when you look at them from afar, they're gentle. They're slower animals, unless they can be quick, but it's not what we really identify them with. And then that's my journey. I was often trying to get places really quickly, really fast. Whether I was trying to muscle my way through it or work relentlessly to get there. And the buffalo reminds me to slow down. There's a lot of power and opportunity in taking things a little bit slower. And then the llama came up. We bought a rug for our new house, and there was a llama on it. It's one of the reasons why I loved it. And then we had somebody help us doing some decorations in our house. And the next thing you know, she buys a llama. We didn't even tell her that it was on the rug, but it kept showing up. And we went and looked it up and said, again, what is...
That's
what do you mean? Huh?
No, I'm pointing at the llama behind me.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So it started showing up in all these areas. I looked up what a llama means. And again, the llama is a really hardworking, loyal animal. And again, they're not the fastest. They're not even animals that people think about a whole lot, but they're incredible animals. And so both of those have played a role in my life, in my leadership, again, in the slowing down and the remembering that, hey, it's hard work starting a new company. It's hard work raising money for nonprofits. Those are all hard work, but these animals kind of remind me, hey, that hard work's worth it, and keep persevering, because there's just a lot of opportunity on the other side. So
that's beautiful. Yeah, and llamas, that just reminds me of Peru right away, and Machu Picchu, where they're running around and they used to be sacrificed. But like there's a rich history around llamas as well. I mean, buffaloes, of course, buffalo as well. I think that the one thing I like that when you mentioned the buffalo is there's also a big ancestral story and respect for our ancestors.
Totally.
Because they were, the buffaloes were hunted down and mistreated, and the history of the buffaloes is fascinating. And I think for me, like, if I think about a chief, a lot of time I would think about a buffalo or a bear.
Well, and how synchronistic and respectful they were. I mean, that was a circle of life for for people that relied on the buffalo. And I definitely go back to that. And then, obviously the tragedy thereafter. But when we look at how synchronistic we can be with the world and in nature, I think buffalo is a classic example.
Oh, beautiful. That's a great way to end it. So, was there any questions that you wish I had asked you, or anything else, or any questions you want to ask me before we wrap this up?
I didn't come in with a list, and you've asked so many great ones that I had to try to come up with a good answer that I don't have any off the top of my head. I'd love to be able to communicate with you after as things come up. Yeah. I'm so excited about your journey and the work that you're doing
thank you.
On those new companies. I hope they're all successful and make that impact. But that's why I'm just the same way. That's the reason why I don't scream it from the rooftops, but I definitely am not shy of having the conversation, because I have seen so much advancement in so many people's lives. And with everything that's going on now and over the past many years, the opportunity to watch how psychedelics can change the trajectory. That's our mission, is to change the trajectory of people's lives positively. But knowing that plant medicine is out there and can do that is reasons why I love these conversations, and I love seeing you helping companies grow in that space to provide that opportunity, because we need that elevation in consciousness to do what's right for the planet, for everyone, for humanity.
Thank you. So what's the best way for people to connect with you and find you and learn about your products?
Our website is sovereignty.co, and sovereignty is I took me forever to misspell it, right?
I had that problem too. But I put in the notes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. But that tells more about our company. And again, we're trying to get really good about putting good content out there. We will start working on some of the psychedelic stuff next year, but certainly from a health perspective on things around sleep, energy, herbs, and stuff like that are good for the body. We've got a great blog set. And then if anybody's ever interested in trying our supplements, we've again got a great energy and cognitive supplement that's got mood elements to it too, and then sleep support. And those are things that I needed to fix in my life in order to do all the big things that I wanted to do. And I got a lot of benefit from it. So
And sleep is a foundational piece.
Huge.
When people are like, I want to jump to do a ceremony, I was like, are you getting enough sleep first? Are you getting exercise? Are you eating well? But yeah, no, this is so good. So I'm about to restart another conversation here, but let's wrap it up. Thank you, Jason, so much for your time. I really appreciated getting to know you and sharing your story with our listeners. This is fantastic.
Thank you. So honored to be on here. Really appreciate what you're doing and having me on. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening or watching us on our new YouTube channel. I enjoyed this show. I enjoyed making it. If you enjoyed it as well, subscribe to it. You can subscribe on Apple Podcast. You can also give some great reviews or just some star reviews. That helps a lot. It helps get the word out there and get more listeners. Share the love. It helps me keep doing what I enjoy doing. So again, have a wonderful day. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.